Hello, I'm Rachel Richards and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hug where we use research by experts and our own experience to discuss everything and anything to do with parenting teenagers.
Hi there, I'm Susie Asley, mindfulness coach, mindful therapist and musician and mother of 3 teenagers. 2 of them are twins.
As a parenting coach and mother of 2 teenagers and 2 stepdaughters, I've seen the transformative power of getting people together to share ideas and support each other. So here we are. Welcome, pull up a chair and let's begin. Now, Susie, we are going to talk about a really controversial topic, which I have been desperate not to go into for quite some time, but the time has arrived because we have been contacted by a listener who said, please, can you talk about Andrew Tate? I have 3 sons and 2 of them seem to be quite enamoured with him and I'm not sure how I deal with this as a parent. Now, there's plenty of material about Andrew Tate online, but here are a couple of quotes to give you a sense of how he thinks. You have to understand that life is war. It's a war for the female you want. It's a war for the car you want. It's a war for the money you want. It's a war for status. Masculine life is war. And a second quote, if you put yourself in a position to be raped, you must bear some responsibility. Those words were uttered 3 years ago when I first did all of the research for this episode looking at the Manosphere. I pulled it out of storage because the Manosphere hasn't gone away. It's got more influential with our boys. Louis Theroux has just released a documentary shining a spotlight on just a few of the men who are involved in the hustle culture part of it. And I thought it was time to go back and give you a chance to review what we know and where we are. If you want to get a full sense of how the younger guys operate, I suggest watching the Netflix documentary. But in this episode, I delve into the ways one of the most infamous figures of the Manosphere operates. Andrew Tate is still around, still very much followed by young boys and men, and others have modelled themselves on him, but vary in what they offer. I'd say they're using similar tactics, so the information is very relevant. The most important thing to remember is that they don't necessarily believe in everything they say. They're trying to get a big following, and saying things that are inflammatory is the easiest way to drive that. And when they get a big following, they make money. Now back to the recording we made in February 2023. Some more quotes. Here's one that's infamous. I'm not a rapist, but I like the idea of just being able to do what I want. I like being free. And another one, don't listen to the advice of people who are living lives you don't want to live. And finally, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. You've got to do something and you've got to do something fast. You just sitting around talking about it and hoping for things to get better isn't going to do anything. In researching it, I actually went down what people always call a rabbit hole because I was trying to get my head around what kind of language he was using that was so attractive.
Yeah.
And why was he becoming so infamous? And there were a few words that were coming up all the time, like the Matrix. Yeah. So that took me off on a little wander around the internet. And I discovered there's a woman called Laura Bates, who's an author, and she's based in the UK. She's spent most of the last decade educating school children about sexism. And she says in the last few years, she's noticed an increasing sense of hostility, aggression and anger in boys' attitudes towards women. And she was trying to put her finger on what was happening. And she said she'll be in a meeting with these boys and suddenly they interrupt her and they will start trotting out false statistics about rape and claiming men are more likely to be victims of domestic violence and incorrect stats about gender pay gaps. And they were arriving with this information, it's written
really shocking,
down.
isn't it?
And she then said, well, where are you getting this information? And they'd say online. And what she then started discovering was that there's a community online. I mean, it's not just her discovering it. It's the truth is there's a community online that these boys are accessing. And it's not just Andrew Tate. No. He's just one of the many people who are in this. And she said the worry is that you've got neutral boys who go out looking and they end up in this area. Now, what area are we talking about? It's called the Manosphere. It's been dubbed that. And it's a network of online men's communities that oppose women's empowerment and support sexist and anti-feminist ideologies. So that sounds like quite a sort of little corner of the internet.
Not so little.
It's not. No. It's not. It's actually changing. And there are reasons why it's changing. They attribute all kinds of social issues to feminists and women, and many of them support hostility. So here are the 4 main categories. there's MRA, men's rights advocates, and they're pushing for political reforms that will benefit men. And, making fun, harassing feminists, other female public figures. MGTOW, so men going their own way, claims that because women are such poison, men should entirely disregard them. They may date women, but they'd never go into anything serious. And in fact, some of them say, right, I'm not even going to be friends with women.
Wow.
Pickup artists or PUAs, and these instruct men in seduction techniques so they can better attract women. And the methods frequently entail treating women unfairly, insulting them, disobeying their consent, all those sorts of things. And actually, Andrew Tate he's known to have used the lover boy method, where you're basically, you use them as an instrument of what you want, right?
It is.
And then incels or involuntary celibates, and they feel they're entitled to a relationship with a woman, but they're unable to do it. So, and this is a shortened phrase, and it was actually created by a woman, ironically, called Alana in the late 90s. And she was in her mid-20s, had just begun dating and started a website for lonely people who were well into adulthood and seemed unable to find love or sexual partners. And it was supposed to be a positive space. She eventually left it, and it was then taken over by men.
Right.
Yes. And in these communities, these men say they're denied sexual and romantic partners by society. Women are to blame. And you could say, well, this is, these poor men. But actually, it's become so problematic that there has been violence towards women and deaths as a result.
It's really serious. It's really
actually
predatory.
Yes. So, and if you think about it, if you've got a lonely young man, whatever age he is, and he thinks, oh, I'd like to get a girlfriend. And men like that say, well, you can't get a girlfriend because all the girls have become feminists and they're all left wing and they're not interested in you. That's going to make you quite upset and angry. Right?
Yeah.
So this is the manosphere. So I've laid out what we're talking about, and you can spot manosphere language. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I chatted with one of my daughters last night because I thought, let's test this. I mentioned the manosphere and she said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I mentioned some of the words. She went, oh yeah, all the boys are using those words.
Yeah, I'm going to go home and ask mine, because we spoke about it in preparation for talking about it here, and they were really, not interested in Andrew Tate. Thought he was hideous and awful, but I'm going to test with the language and see how
prevalent it is. So, for example, quite a bit of it comes from The Matrix, the film. And Andrew Tate kept mentioning The Matrix, and he still does it. And I was thinking, what is that? So, what is it? Little dog whistle for the manosphere. So it's
your other conspiracy stuff.
Correct. Correct. And this has exploded as a result of COVID and all sorts of things. So there's the red pill, and the red pillars basically they believe the world is unfair and stacked against men in favor of women, and that the only way of overcoming this is by becoming an alpha male, going to the gym, treating women poorly. You're awake to what society's been trying to force on you, and you do things differently because you've taken the red pill. And this comes from that film. Yeah. Blue pill is a state of blissful ignorance brought on by refusing to take the red pill. So you've said, I don't actually want to be aware. I'm going to stick within society and, I'm not going to accept the truth, right? And then there's actually a black pill, and they argue that men are systematically oppressed, but think that the only solution to overcome this will be drastic change of society and using violent means. So that's really that's like the far end of it. So other terms they'll use, alpha male or Chad. And a Chad is an appealing, successful man wanted by all women, basically. He's
in their opinion.
Beta male, a typical man who has not taken the red pill and is inferior to the alpha male. Femoid or foid is a term for female humanoid, primarily used by incels. And gynocentrism, which is a belief that women control and rule society. I sort of looked into that a bit more, and actually it's this idea that women will only choose up and across in terms of status. So men necessarily then have to either be one of the top men or they have to trade down.
God.
And I don't know how they're actually assessing who's
ill.
Who's up, and who's it's
so
very
toxic.
It's scary because it's so dehumanizing.
Yeah, massively.
So why has this become more prevalent?
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting point, and you brought that up because I've looked at him on, we've all seen him online. He's really engaging, and all his motivational stuff is really motivational. You can't really argue with it, but it's all the other awful toxic stuff that goes with it that's the problem. But kids are kids are going to be attracted by the motivational stuff.
And that's absolutely right. It is motivational. A lot of what he says is very exciting for boys who are young, or men who are young, who want to feel, that burst of energy about getting things done in life and being successful. And it's interesting because what's happened is that, because then you say, well, why? Yes, he's successful, but why so successful? Why is he getting so many followers? And that's to do with algorithms.
Yeah, and he's also appealing to the vulnerability in these young men, these young boys, ones who maybe feel that things are difficult, or they're not doing what they want to do. And, normal young male thinking, who am I? What's my identity? What do I want to do? And, life can be difficult. He's offering an easy fix, isn't he? Yeah. You can have this, you don't have to do much. You just have to, follow me and do what I say, and not have any empathy or compassion to anyone, and go at it and be violent in the process. It's hideous.
Yes, and it's wonderful to have a strong man. If you're looking around you and everybody around you seems to be overweight and tired, and having somebody who looks fit, and who's flying around in private jets and carrying guns and saying, I can do what I want. But like this.
It is interesting though, because there are lots of motivational speakers out there, some really amazing ones, and they are not picking up the same interest as him.
And that's where we come to the algorithm. So ISD is an organisation that claims to be powering solutions to extremism, hate and disinformation. Their head of communications and editorial, Tim Squirrell, points out that when it comes to Tate's ideology, there's a mix of red pill culture, which I've mentioned, hustle culture, and it's kind of a resurgence of early 2010s men's rights activist culture. And the reason I mentioned algorithms is that they're critically important. So what happens is that you mentioned boys going out looking for answers, which is 100% what we as teenagers all do. Everybody's trying to find their identity. They're trying to figure out their place in the world. How does this work? I want a girlfriend. How do I get one? What do I do? And the algorithms, you just watch one of something, can result in a lot of other things being served up of that same thing. So YouTube Shorts uses quite a lot of red pill content to follow on from things that have happened before. Now, he's been banned from a lot of these platforms. He's only on Twitter. But his followers, he's incited his followers to put things up that will then follow on when someone searches for this information. So say a boy goes on and searches for, how do I get a girl, or how do I get strong, or whatever. Very quickly, they will find themselves being pushed information.
And he pushes the really controversial stuff that he says, and that gets spammed about, and that gets more interest because people are attracted to that, and so it goes. It's a circle.
Yes. So what separates, for example, TikTok from other platforms is how aggressively the algorithm optimizes and the volume of people uploading similar kinds of content. And YouTube Shorts has tried to mimic that. And Tate specifically encouraged his audience to upload videos of him, resulting in his content flooding the platform. And he was encouraging them to post the most controversial stuff, so that it will provoke arguments. And once you've provoked an argument, you get more engagement.
It's very clever.
And then it's called, it's clickbait. It's standard outrage bait.
And the platforms are not doing anything.
Then they're not willing to be accountable.
Because it's getting attention to them. It's really, really bad.
Absolutely. But he is not a lone phenomenon. He is actually part of this whole problem. And, YouTube influencers are able to reach people by using clever keywords and techniques. So I think one of the messages here is that, we need to understand how these algorithms and the messages that people are using, like Tate, are being abused to lure in our teenagers. And that they are being manipulated by this.
They are. But, it's makes them and us very powerless, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's no accident that this is the same audience. These young men, it's the same audience that far-right groups and ultra-nationalists target.
Yes.
This woman, Bates, who was doing this research, she says that extremist groups are actually targeting boys at younger ages. She's read manifestos from leaders of those communities trying to target boys who are 10 or 11 because they're trying to figure out the world. And if you can start early, you can really, you can embed your philosophy in their brains, and it's very hard to reach.
Yeah, and we all love a scapegoat, don't we? You know, all the bigoted ideas. You know, we love a scapegoat if it's women, if it's race, if it's religion. You know, or let's blame it on them, and you know, as a reason for why something isn't easy for me to do.
We all do. Yeah, we absolutely. I'm guilty myself too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's quite a subtle process that these recruiters use. And one of the hunting grounds they use is multiplayer online games, because what they'll do is they'll go into the multiplayer game, they'll drop some, you know, slightly incendiary content, see whether it lands, and then they move them on to chat rooms where they're talking about gameplay, but actually they're trying to groom them into these communities. So this is far right.
Because they're already, I mean, I have boys who game, they already have their adrenaline pumped, they're already shooting and in the middle of this war, so it fits in really beautifully there.
Yes,
really
absolutely fits the images, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And she says if the far right were infiltrating our schools, you know, or Salafi jihadists with these sorts of narratives, they'd be shut down.
Yes.
There'd be much more outrage, wouldn't there?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that a lot of the messages that the boys are reading are very motivational. Yeah. I agree. I decided to go into his war rooms, which is on his website.
That's brave.
And I read his tenets. He's got, I think, like 41 tenets, and it's hilarious because they're actually really good things, but they don't go along with a lot of the other stuff he does or says.
No,
right? This is the problem. There's dissonance there completely. And the problem is an 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old boy going to see that?
No. And on his Twitter feed, I was looking at that this morning, he's using Nelson Mandela quotes, which is just, how dare he?
Shoot me.
But how dare he?
Yes.
But,
he's trying to align himself with these thinkers.
Really good.
Yeah.
It just, and young boys will be like, oh, wow, he's using that, then he must be okay.
Yes, and the visuals, for example, on the man room, I haven't seen the Hustlers stuff he's got, but the visuals, he'll say international, and then he'll show him in a private jet, and then he'll show a lot of watches, and then he'll show him holding guns, and then him saying, I have a right to be with my fellow men, and
it's
all
a
these.
Caricature,
it's a caricature. It's almost funny, yes, because when you look at this stuff, but what he's actually displaying is precisely what a 14-year-old boy is going to think is successful.
Yes, successful.
And why wouldn't you?
Yeah, but he's giving a really false image of masculinity because, we've spent many years trying to teach boys that being masculine doesn't mean you have to be like that. You can also, embody the feminine. You can also, and it's really important that you're able to be soft and empathetic and compassionate and can talk about things. And he's just kind of got rid of all of that. So it's almost like we've gone completely backwards. It's really,
yes, and
really
I get it. I get the message he's handing out, because there's this sense that it's his world that he's creating, that he's selling is dog eat dog.
Yes.
You're either winning or you're not.
Yes.
And I remember it being quite a bit like that when my career started, and feeling like, you either were going to beat the other people in your teams or whatever. And we were put into teams to try and control that. Yeah. But at the same time, you knew that you had to be on top. And it was only as I grew up into an adult and a working adult that I realized how incredibly powerful it is when you form allies.
Yes, well, it's the whole abundance scarcity mindset. So scarcity mindset is there's not enough to go around, and we're fighting each other for scraps. There's not enough, so it's dog eat dog, and I have to be better than you, otherwise I lose. Abundance mindset is there is more than enough to go around, and if we help each other, if we lift each other up, there is more for everybody, and it's very scarcity.
I love that. That's a really good way of summarizing what we need to be saying to our kids.
Absolutely.
About the difference between the way he's portraying the world and the way it genuinely can be.
And unfortunately, our culture is very, in a capitalist society, is scarcity mindset. It's all built around that. And if we can teach them abundance, the world would look very different in everything.
Yes. And he's using his platform to promote Hustlers University, which is a quick how to get rich in the digital age, lessons ranging from copywriting to crypto investing. And so he's, charging people for this. He's making money, guys. Yeah. So he's trying to pull in as many people as possible, be as controversial as possible, because the more people who are talking about him, the more money he'll make.
Yes, exactly. It's a scam.
Yeah.
But he kind of seems to believe it too.
Yes. I said to my husband, what do you think of Andrew Tate? He just said, who? So he's just not done. He literally thinks he's a total loser.
Yes.
When I mentioned who he was and said, I really don't want to even know about him.
Yeah.
You know, the really strong guys can admit their failings. Yeah. They can accept when they get things wrong, talk about it. Yes. And this is, you know, not the sort of person I'd spend any time with.
No. That's because he's incorporating the feminine into the masculine.
Correct. And it's possible.
It's possible and really good and really healthy.
And the problem is that their version of how to be a man in this, you know, dog eat dog world is, I'm going to just do one quote of his to give people who may not know who he is a sense. One of his quotes was, she's my property. So if she's selling herself, she's selling my property. Like, we're going to rent my house and I get the money, right? Mm. You're my chick, you're my property. You're going to sell pictures of my property. Cool, where's my money? Yeah. Right. That's his mindset, that a woman is his property.
Yes.
So...
yeah, I asked my kids, you know, talking about your husband, his reaction. So I have an almost 18-year-old. How that's happened, I'm not sure, but that's another story.
Still alive. He's still going to school.
We're nearly there. He's nearly an adult.
Yeah, that doesn't happen
every
night. Has no one told you that?
Damn it, no. And he was very opinionated about Andrew Tate. I can't really repeat what he said on this podcast. But he thinks he's an absolute loser and an idiot. And he said, actually, anyone who's actually had a conversation with an actual woman would realise what an idiot he is. My younger boy, and he had a mate in the car, and I asked, so they sort of squirmed as I asked, and he was like, Mom, stop it. They obviously knew who he was, and they didn't have many opinions, but were in agreement that he was a total loser and an idiot. But yeah, it wasn't a very in-depth conversation. But the general was that no, we think he's an idiot. He's horrible. My daughter didn't know much about him. A bit. Yeah. I mean, my daughters know a lot about him because they are so incensed. Yeah. What we don't want to do is draw battle lines, I think, because... And what's interesting is that a lot of girls don't really go for that. No. A lot of girls do, but a lot of girls don't. And the problem with, you know, the incel culture is they feel like, you know, I've got nothing to trade online. I haven't got a college degree from the top university. I haven't got lots of money. I don't look like these guys. How am I supposed to attract a girl? Well, maybe meet some in real life, because actually you may find that they're perfectly pleasant to talk to. And how do we approach it with our boys, which is what the question was, wasn't it? And I think that's really, really key, that we can break it down into, you know, what's the good in he's saying, which is all the motivational stuff, which is actually quite good, but maybe we can find that elsewhere. And then what's the bad stuff? Like, what do you think is masculine? You know, what do you think is a good way to be a man in the world? What are your values in that? And do they match this or not? And
I love that, and I think that's absolutely spot on. And what we have to do is we have to avoid silencing boys. Our silence is their oxygen. These. So we have to be prepared, though, to hear stuff that we may not want to hear. So actually, when we say, "What do you think?" like you said. We can't say when they tell us something that's uncomfortable or we disagree with, well, that's not appropriate, or you shouldn't. And you can say, are you aware that that's considered to be misogynistic? Yeah. How do you feel about that? Yeah. We need to give them a space to think their thoughts through and be able to discuss them without us telling them they're bad or they're wrong.
Yeah, because that just shuts down the conversation, like we've talked about many times, or telling them they're wrong, or saying, you know, you mustn't follow this guy or he's bad. They just do it when you're not looking.
Well, absolutely. But also, okay, what is it about those messages that's so appealing? Because like we said, I totally get it. I read some of the things he says and I think, yes, I'm going to get up today and I am going to do that work. Exactly. And these people are lazing around. And, but he's also a denier of depression. Yeah. He's a denier of all sorts of things that we know.
Social anxiety doesn't exist, in his opinion.
Yeah. So he's just saying you're weak. If you have any issues, you're weak.
But maybe we can suggest some good motivational speakers that they can get that inspiration from in a healthy, positive way, rather than with all the gunk that he offers with it.
I don't think a lot of them are actually looking at, I want to beat women up and have them as slaves or any. I don't think that's what's attracting them. No. I think what's attracting them is his lifestyle, his emphasis on physical fitness, and being strong. and the other stuff comes in underneath that, because then they think, oh, to do that, I then have to be that.
Yeah.
So it's about picking apart.
Yeah.
Do you want a luxury lifestyle?
Yeah.
Okay, if you want a luxury lifestyle, then you have to discuss how that happens.
Yeah.
And it's really hard nowadays because there are so many Instagrammers who appear to do nothing.
Yes.
And have these plush lifestyles.
Yeah, and I think that's what's attracting a lot of them, is that he's making it. He's explicitly saying that it's easy. It's easy to have what I have. You just have to do this and this, and then they can.
And you have to work at it, though. Yeah.
Yeah. He's saying you have to work at it, but that it's kind of, he's giving them a route map.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And he's saying, if you're in the matrix, you think you should be out there doing X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I'm going to open your eyes and I'm going to show you how you can do things a different way that will bring you vast amounts of money.
And teenagers hate being manipulated.
Yes.
So if we can kind of point out that where it's not in alignment and where they're being scammed, they don't like that.
No.
They feel that.
So that's it. So looking for the inconsistency. So we do have to engage. Unfortunately, it may involve having to talk about Andrew Tate and do some research. Yeah. But it's about looking for the inconsistencies in what he's saying and where. So this is good, this isn't good, and you don't have to be the bad person to have the good stuff. Like Nelson Mandela, I don't think ever, forced women into subjugation in the way that Andrew Tate talks about, and yet he's still quoting Nelson Mandela. I'm sorry, but it's not not
cool. And maybe asking them, who do they think are great male role models? Either in the media, but also in their daily lives. Maybe that's more appropriate. With family members or where they go to school or in their clubs. Who do they think is a great masculine role model, and why? What do they like about them? And it's probably not the stuff that Andrew Tate is spouting. It will be other things, because what he's showing is a world where it's so harsh and so cold, and there are none of the beautiful parts of being a human, and being kind, or what effect do you have in the world? He doesn't care about the environment, for example. He was laughing about it. So what effect do you want to have on the world? You make an impact on the people around you, and is that what you want? Probably not. Yeah,
I love that. And so it's about having a group of men that you can perhaps talk about that might inspire them. I'm going to put a list of the ones that I've managed to pull out on our website, so that in the blog post, so that people can actually see suggestions if you're struggling to find somebody who's online or who's a big name who might inspire your son.
That's a great idea.
And these are successful people. We also need to arm ourselves with the facts. So what's happening is, for example, this lady Laura Bates, who was going in and talking to people, and they were coming up with sheets of paper, coming up with facts. You don't have to be able to have the answer immediately. So if they say yes, but say, oh, that's really, thanks for showing me that fact that you think's a fact. Let's go and actually look at it and show them how to unpick what they're hearing or seeing and question whether it's real or not. And this is about teaching reasoning. And, we talk about the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Actually, we need reasoning as well. And it's about listening to what people are saying and then saying, I do or I don't like that. And that does, or that resonates with me, but I can accept that I don't want all of.
Yeah, that's a great idea. A really great idea. And also maybe asking them, I've mentioned, asking what they think a man is, but what do they like in women? What do they value?
I like that. Yes,
how do they
absolutely.
see women, like the women that they know? And maybe if they're really young, they might still be at that phase where they haven't spoken to a girl, even though they probably sit next to them in maths.
Yeah.
But who do they know, and why do they like them, and what do they value? Like their mother, their sister, their cousin, their neighbour. What does it mean to them?
And give them space to talk about how you get a girl.
And how are they annoying? What way they're annoying? Yes. How do they get a girl?
Well, because this is stuff that bothers them. And so actually, and they're probably really embarrassed about it, uncomfortable and trying to figure this stuff out. Well, actually, let's talk about it and give them tips.
Yeah.
Right?
We haven't got horns.
No. And that point you made is really, really key, because my husband pointed out that one of the techniques used by agents who had been captured, if they were a woman, they were told one of the ways that you could save yourself from really unpleasant things that men might do to you is start engaging with them about their mother, or their sister or some female in their life.
Interesting.
So, for example, what does your mother do for you?
Yeah.
What does she mean to you? What does your sister, what's the good and bad about your sister? I don't know if it's always going to work, because I know that these two, Andrew Tate and his brother, have a sister who's fled to Kentucky. And
I immediately Googled who is their mother. What's the story?
Yeah. So this is, we've covered what we can with this. It's a very big topic. It's incendiary. I'll probably get trolled for it. I put something up that a school teacher had suggested on Instagram, and I got two people trying to lure me into an argument that wasn't very nice, but I refuse to be goaded.
You're very savvy.
I just don't care. It just makes me laugh. I mean, I just say, well, why do you think that? Come on, let's talk about it. And they don't want to talk.
No, but the discussion is so important. And I think
it's really important.
It's made me, just having this conversation is making me want to just go and check with my kids. We've had all these conversations that we've just both suggested. They're really important.
Yeah.
And we get caught up in our busy lives, don't we, of the day to day, but this stuff is important.
And likewise with girls, saying, how do you feel about boys? Don't just demonize them. They're not all doing, they want relationships. They want to be successful. That, we have to be soft as well as, direct. You have to be prepared to give them the chance to say how they feel.
And get the girls to call the boys out if they come with this kind of behaviour.
Absolutely. What do you think? Have you had any issues with this? Do you know whether your sons have been accessing this material? Has it been talked about in their schools? It might even be worth just bringing up the words that we've mentioned and seeing whether they light a fuse, whether the boys are accustomed to using those words, and whether they really know what the origin of this stuff is, because they may well have clicked into a zeitgeist but not really understand what that zeitgeist is.
And it can be, I think it can be the classic, can't it? We don't want to talk about it because then it's a thing, and we don't want it to be bigger than it needs to be. But if we don't talk about it then, and they find it themselves, that's worse.
Yes, absolutely. Our silence is their oxygen.
Yes, I like that.
So if you've enjoyed this episode, then why not help other parents? Tell your friends, tell the school, subscribe to our podcast, and it would be a massive bonus if you please leave a review. You can also sign up to receive all the latest at our own website, where there's a blog, reviews, links. I will put a few sort of names of people that you could actually look at that might help your sons find role models that are perhaps a bit more positive. The address is www.teenagersuntangled.com. And Susie can be lots of really good blogs there, lots of things that you can do to help yourself when you're stressed. And you can contact her and she will talk to you.
For free, for 15 minutes.
Well, 15 minutes, yeah. As opposed to some of these Manosphere people who are charging thousands of pounds for a 15-minute consultation. Bargain. It's a bargain. Yeah, it's all quality though. Okay. That's it for now.
Bye-bye for now.